Hello, this is Mark Proctor, and this is the second music theory video about half steps and whole steps. In any musical key or scale, there are half steps and whole steps. So on a guitar fretboard or a bass guitar fretboard, two notes that are right next to each other, the frets are right by each other, that's a half step. But if you have one fret or one note in between, that's a whole step. So there's a half step, there's a whole step. On a keyboard, if you have a black note and a white note that are right next to each other, that would be a half step. But if you have, or two white notes that are right next to each other with no note in between, that is a half step. But if you have two white notes that are next to each other but have a black note in between, that's a whole step. Or if you have a black note and a white note with another white note in between, that is a whole step. Half step has no notes in between, whole step has one note in between. One other thing to point out about this is that on a keyboard, the B and C note and the E and F note, which are both all white notes, they are right next to each other with no black note in between, no sharp or flat black note that would be in between. So the B and the C are right next to each other, and the E and the F. And the reason that's important to remember is because on a guitar fretboard, that way you know, for instance, when you are on this biggest E string, let's say we started here at the 3rd fret on a G note, half step would go to G sharp, another half step would go up to A, another half step would go to A sharp, another half step will go to B, but between B and C, there's no black note on a piano, so that's why we typically don't say B sharp. Technically it is a B sharp, but we usually just say C. So B and C are right next to each other, and E and F are right next to each other. But other than that, when you're going up a fretboard, you'll know that it always goes to the next sharp note. F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. Or if you're thinking of it in terms of flat keys and going backwards, B, B flat, A flat, G flat. Now you'll notice with that G sharp and A flat are the same note. It's just a different way of writing it in music. So depending on what key you're in, if you're in the key of A flat, this note will be written on sheet music as an A flat. But if you're in the key of E or the key of A or the key of G sharp, then this note would be written as a G sharp, G sharp. So remember that the B and the C are right next to each other, and the E and the F, but other than that, it's going up as a sharp note or down as a flat note. B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, or going backwards, G, G flat, F, E, E flat, and so on. So that's half steps and whole steps.